Testing. Here.
Okay, we can hear you. They saying that let's see, Marissa's saying I can't see Marissa. No. Okay, we'll get started as everyone continues to trickle in. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daryl Cuba, the founding editor-in-chief of the Harvard Anti-Racist Policy Journal. Welcome to our first ever panel. I'm delighted for you all to join me in this exciting conversation about the international phenomenon of freedom colonies as early examples of anti-racism, decolonization, and indigenization. I'm a Center for Public Leadership Fellow here at the Harvard Kennedy School, as well as a mid-career MPA candidate. I'm the Ivy League's first Wikipedia Fellow at Columbia and the inaugural Oral History Fellow at the Washington National Cathedral. As an alum of the New York Times, Vice, Tribeca, and Fox Home Entertainment, I'm also a co-founder of Hacking Racism at the Columbia Business School, the Mapping Freedom Project, Disrupt Wikipedia, and the International Association of Freedom Colonies. And my work actively dismantles the settler colonial narrative, perspective, lens, and worldview of the colonizer culture, especially the effects of digital tech and data colonialism. I'll present my research on the Mapping Freedom Project and the international phenomenon of freedom colonies, and will be followed by Dr. Timothy Nelson, whose multifaceted work concerns racism, ambition, and the search for opportunity. These themes were revealed in his 2015 PhD dissertation, The Significance of the Afro Frontier. And Dr. Nelson himself was born in South Central LA, raised in Compton during the early 1990s in the wake of race and class-based conflict with the LAPD. He earned his PhD from the University of Texas at El Paso, and he will present Anti-Racism Postscript, Blackdom and the Afro-Frontier, on how anti-racism scholarship has focused the work of Afro-Frontierism. The Afro-Frontier is a postscript to the Exoduster saga that permeated the post-Civil War era, as well as the post-Reconstruction period, and his presentation will focus on his newly constructed narrative of Blackdom, New Mexico, with a framework of anti-racism as an omnipresent element. At the turn of the 20th century, Blackdom was a real place that went beyond freedom and nurtured Black sovereignty. Our other panelists, Major Joe Womack, we've lost contact with, but just in case he's able to connect, I'll read his bio. He was retired from the United States Marine Corps Reserves, and now serves as the executive director of AfricanTownChess.org, which in the historic Africantown community of Mobile, Alabama. The organization was founded to reestablish the unity in a neighborhood that once thrived as the example of the most loving and family-oriented atmosphere of the Deep South. Through projects geared towards beautifying the streets and homes, producing quality produce and living standards, preserving the first public school for African Americans in the state of Alabama, creating a community of watchmen, and retaining the culture and heritage of our nearly forgotten people. Africatown Chess is the leading example of difference makers in the historic Africatown area, and ensures that the 160-year-old Africatown community is clean, healthy, educated, safe, and sustainable. A hearty thank you to our panelists for being here, and to you, our audience, for being here as well. And with that, we will get started. I do want to honor and acknowledge the indigenous lands and lifeways. Malcolm X in 1964 said, if you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made, and they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less healed the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there. Well, we admit the knife is there, as well as the gun and all other methods of genocide and slaughter that has brought us here today. And we commit to the full scope of healing and progress, not only pulling out the knife and other weapons and healing the wound, but providing restitution and restoring equity and parity through holistic decolonization and indigenizing methods and efforts that lead to freedom, liberation, and sovereignty. I will take this time now to acknowledge that I today am streaming from the territory of the dispossessed in the Pawtucket and Massachusetts land, on the continent known to many Native communities as Turtle Island. And I acknowledge that as scholars and inhabitants here at Harvard and in Cambridge, we benefit from the continued dispossession of indigenous lands and peoples. I would also like to acknowledge the braided history of slaves and freed slaves who were forcibly stolen and brought to these lands, and the intertwining of those stories with the stories of immigrants who work in the kitchen, the houses, and the fields. Today, we celebrate the achievements and resilience of Native communities and use our position to amplify the voices of Indigenous students on campus. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is occupied, unceded, and seized territory. We honor and give thanks and gratitude to the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts, the ancestral traditional stewards of this land throughout the generations, who allow the enduring racial relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories, and the settler university to copy these lands known in Eurocentric epistemology as Harvard University, the USA, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. We pay respects to their elders, past and present, and to teach our children that America was discovered erases the millions of indigenous peoples who were the original stewards of the land we now call the United States of America. It also erases the indigenous peoples that thrive and care for this earth. And as individual members of these and such institutions and systems, we can do more to move toward decolonizing practices in all aspects of our lives. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that has brought us here today. And please join us in uncovering such truth at any and all events.